For nearly 3 decades, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary was considered America's most secure prison. Surrounded by the freezing waters and powerful currents of San Francisco Bay, it earned a reputation as the prison no one could escape. But on the night of June 11, 1962, 3 inmates vanished from their cells. By the time guards discovered they were gone, only lifelike dummy heads remained in their beds. More than 60 years later, investigators still cannot say with certainty whether the men drowned or achieved the impossible. To understand how they nearly pulled off the impossible, we first have to understand the prison they were trying to escape. Located on a rocky island in the middle of San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary opened as a federal prison in 1934. It was reserved for inmates considered the most dangerous or the most likely to escape from other prisons. The icy water, powerful currents, and constant surveillance made escape seem almost impossible. Officials believed that if anyone tried, the bay itself would stop them. Yet among the men imprisoned here was one inmate who believed every prison had a weakness, and he intended to find it. Among the inmates at Alcatraz was Frank Morris, a man known for his intelligence and his history of escape attempts from other prisons. Assigned to neighboring cells were brothers John Anglin and Clarence Anglin, who had also attempted escapes in the past. Over time, the 3 men formed a plan unlike anything prison officials had imagined. Working in secret, they began preparing for an escape that many believed could never succeed. Hidden behind an ordinary prison sink was a flaw that could change everything. Behind each cell's sink was a small ventilation opening leading to an unused utility corridor. Investigators later concluded that over many months, the escapees quietly enlarged the openings using improvised tools. They worked patiently, taking advantage of the noise from prison activities to help conceal the sounds of their efforts. Every day brought them one step closer to a chance at freedom. But escaping the cell was only the beginning. They still needed a way to fool the guards. The escapees knew that simply leaving their cells wasn't enough. They also needed time before anyone realized they were gone. After the escape, investigators discovered lifelike dummy heads resting on the prisoners' pillows. Viewed during routine nighttime checks, they appeared convincing enough to delay the alarm until morning. That extra time may have become one of the most important advantages the men had. While the guards searched the prison, the 3 men were already somewhere beyond the cell walls. The question was, where? On the night of June 11, 1962, after lights out, the plan was finally set in motion. Investigators later concluded that Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin slipped out of their cells through the enlarged ventilation openings and entered the narrow utility corridor behind the cell block. From there, they made their way upward through the prison's maintenance areas, avoiding the watchful eyes of the guards. By the time the prison settled into silence, the 3 men were no longer where anyone expected them to be. Leaving the prison was only half the challenge. Ahead of them lay freezing water, powerful currents, and perhaps the most dangerous part of the journey. According to the FBI's investigation, the 3 escapees reached the shoreline after leaving the prison. Investigators concluded they launched a homemade raft and entered the cold, dark waters of San Francisco Bay. From that point on, the evidence becomes far less certain. No confirmed witness saw them cross the bay, and no one knows exactly what happened after they disappeared into the night. Whether they reached land or were overcome by the powerful currents remains one of the greatest unanswered questions in American criminal history. When dawn broke, the prison guards realized something extraordinary had happened, but the clues they uncovered would only deepen the mystery. On the morning of June 12, 1962, a routine head count quickly turned into an emergency. Prison officers discovered that Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin were missing. Their beds still appeared occupied until the blankets were pulled back, revealing lifelike dummy heads placed to fool the guards. As the search spread through Alcatraz, investigators uncovered the enlarged ventilation openings behind the cells. It became clear that the 3 men had not simply disappeared. They had carried out one of the most daring prison escapes in American history. The prison had been beaten, Now the question was whether the men had beaten the bay. Within hours, one of the largest manhunts in Alcatraz's history was underway. The FBI, the U.S. Coast Guard, and other law enforcement agencies searched the waters of San Francisco Bay, nearby shorelines, and surrounding communities. During the search, investigators recovered several items connected to the escape, including a makeshift life vest and personal belongings believed to have belonged to the escapees. Yet despite days of searching, no confirmed trace of Frank Morris or the Anglin brothers was ever found. The lack of definitive evidence only deepened the mystery. With no bodies recovered and no confirmed sightings, investigators were left with a question that remains unanswered to this day. Did the escapees drown, or did they disappear into history? The FBI took charge of the investigation and spent years following leads across the United States and abroad. Agents interviewed witnesses, analyzed the physical evidence, and examined every reported sighting. The official conclusion was that the three escapees most likely drowned in the cold waters of San Francisco Bay before reaching safety. Yet there was one major problem with that conclusion. No bodies were ever recovered. Without definitive proof of their fate, the mystery refused to disappear. If the case was closed, why did reports of the escapees continue to surface for decades? Although the FBI believed the escapees had most likely drowned, the story did not end there. Over the following decades, numerous reported sightings were shared with investigators. Friends and relatives of the Anglin brothers later said they believed the brothers had survived, pointing to family stories and photographs that they argued supported that belief. However, none of these claims were independently verified, and investigators never found conclusive evidence proving that Frank Morris or the Anglin brothers were alive after the escape. Then, more than 50 years after the escape, a letter arrived that stunned investigators and reignited the mystery. In 2013, the San Francisco Police Department received a handwritten letter from someone claiming to be John Anglin, one of the Alcatraz escapees. The writer said he had survived the escape along with Frank Morris and Clarence Anglin. The letter claimed that Frank Morris had died years earlier and that Clarence Anglin had also passed away. The writer also stated that he was elderly, in poor health, and willing to surrender under certain conditions. Authorities examined the letter, but they were unable to verify who wrote it. To this day, no conclusive evidence has proven that the letter was genuine. If the letter couldn't answer the mystery, what does the evidence actually tell us? Could the escape have been possible after all? More than 60 years later, historians and investigators remain divided. Those who believe the escapees drowned point to the freezing water, strong tidal currents, and the lack of any confirmed physical evidence that the men reached shore. Others argue that the careful planning of the escape suggests they may have anticipated these dangers. They also note that no bodies were ever recovered and that reported sightings and family accounts kept the mystery alive for decades. In the end, the available evidence supports different interpretations, but none provides a definitive answer. That uncertainty is what has made the Alcatraz escape one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. So, after examining all the evidence, what conclusions should we draw? The answer may surprise you. After decades of investigation, one fact remains unchanged. No one knows with certainty what happened after Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers disappeared into San Francisco Bay. The FBI concluded that they most likely drowned, a conclusion based on the dangerous conditions and the absence of confirmed evidence that they reached land. Yet the lack of recovered bodies, along with later reports and unverified claims, has kept the possibility of survival alive in the public imagination. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how they escaped Alcatraz, but whether they truly escaped it at all. More than 60 years later, the prison still stands, and its most famous mystery remains unsolved. What do you think happened to Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers? Did they become the only inmates to escape Alcatraz? Or did the waters of San Francisco Bay claim them that night? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy true stories, historical mysteries, and evidence-based documentaries, subscribe to Beyond Belief Stories. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next mystery.